Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's TP Talks webinar. Today, I'm joined by Dimitris Anamatros, Vice President, Customer Service and Enterprise Network Engineering with Hughes Network. Dimitris will share his insights on why Hughes chose to adopt a universal agent approach and its impact on their business. I'm your moderator, Amit Shankadas, Executive Vice President at Teleperformance, responsible for market engagement, and will facilitate today's conversation with Dimitris. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. You will find several related resources available to you to download in the resource widget on the right of your screen. This webinar is designed to be highly interactive, so you'll see multiple icons at the bottom of your console. If you have questions, please submit them using the little button at the bottom, the question mark. Sorry, the question Q&A little button widget. We've received questions prior to the webinar. We will respond to those as we go through this webinar too. If you'd like to reach us, use the email widget at the bottom too. So what is TP Talks? So TP Talks is designed to share with you insights into best practices, big trends, innovations, and real-world success stories in a concise 30-minute package. Teleperformance has worked diligently with our clients to curate this content for you. There's several of these available on demand. We'll talk about how you can access them in a minute. A little bit about Teleperformance, your host for today's TP Talks. Founded in 1978, Teleperformance has been serving industry brands for almost 4 decades, with a focus on supporting our clients and making each interaction matter in 160 markets around the world. We support many well-known brands across verticals and channels, including customer care, technical support, acquisition, digital solutions, specialized services, including RPA, back-office automation. This webinar is a reflection of our commitment to this concept of helping companies make their interactions matter. We're particularly proud of the awards we've won and the recognition we get from industry analysts and various industry stalwarts, but also the awards and recognition we get from our clients. That being said, what we're here for. I'd like to introduce you to Dimitris. He is currently the Vice President of Customer Service and Enterprise Network Engineering for North America. In this role, he is responsible for all operations in 6 contact centers providing customer service and technical support to all North American consumer segments, as well as a team of 40 engineers who are responsible for the design, monitoring, and maintenance of Hughes Enterprise customer networks. His team also supports dealers, distributors, consumer VARs, large enterprise help desks. Dimitris also leads efforts in expanding all other channels of support, which consists of IVR self-service, My Hughes Net, Enterprise Customer Gateway, and social media channels. Dimitris, welcome and thank you for doing this TP Talk today.
Thank you for having me, Amit.
Excellent. You know, Dimitris, I think we'll get started with a poll. So let's poll our audience first. So this is time for you guys to interact. The question is, what does a universal agent mean to you? Is it some skills only? In other words, just customer service. Skills means service, sales, tech support, order management, billing, etc. All skills, some channels, email, chat, voice, all channels, some channels and some skills, or all channels and all skills. I'll give you all a couple of seconds to respond to this, and then we will see the results. If you can all take a moment, respond, and let's move forward. Here we go and see what does it mean. Interesting, Dimitris, for most people on the call, it means all channels and all skills. How do you at Hughes define a universal agent, Dimitris?
I think that all channels and all skills would be utopia for us. We do have agents that are in that realm. I don't know if we'll ever get to every single channel, every single skill at every single agent, but we definitely can create those agents.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see all channels, all skills. That seems to be fairly complex to be able to pull off. But let's try another poll here real quick and see where people are on this journey to home agent. So if you all can take a moment here and see where and respond to this. Is it still a concept, something you're considering, you're piloting or testing, you're partially deployed, maybe in part of your organization, or you are fully deployed? Again, I'll give you a few seconds here to respond. Okie dokie, we will move forward, and with the drum roll, let's see where this audience is on the universal agent deployment. Wow. I don't think I've ever seen 42.9% appear twice on a poll, so for two categories, still a concept and partially deployed. Very few people are fully deployed. Very interesting here. Dimitri, you folks are, how would you rank here, partially or fully deployed?
I think we are fully deployed based on the business model and plan that we have. I don't think we ever intend on having every agent be able to do every single thing on every single channel. There are still some things that we like to have different control over, and their volumes are small enough that they don't even justify us putting that across the whole board. But we do have certain agents that can work in any of these realms.
So Dimitri, let's talk a little bit about that, because you've obviously been through this journey. You've piloted, you tested, you've adapted, and as I recollect in our earlier conversation, you mentioned, and to your point earlier, about 15% of your agents on specialty skills are not universal agents. So help us understand, where are you, how did you get to this journey, this model, and what is that model for you folks?
Yeah, well, the journey started with, it wasn't necessarily a cost-saving exercise or anything like that. It was trying to remove friction from the customer experience. So, to make sure that they got handled at the first point of contact. And first thing we started looking at were transfers, and where were our customers not getting, getting their issues handled or resolved at that initial point of contact. And the big thing was between our technical teams and our non-technical teams. The next step, we kind of looked at what was going on, and when we really looked at the technical training, it included most of what the non-technical guys and the billing guys got, because they had to, being a service provider, they had to understand the packages, they had to understand the pricing, they did all this. So it was really just a natural progression to start to really look at that training and see what the delta was to add. We really only added, after it was all said and done, maybe a week and a half, to the classroom. But we went through all kinds of iterations of how we delivered all of that and how we rolled out that that total agent. But really we looked at trying to get the bulk of our work handled at the initial point of contact. And we still have some specialty groups like our retention teams. We have some special billing some high-end billing folks and and some high-end technical folks. But most of those don't have to do with the skill. They have to do with levels of access and things that cannot be handled at that point of contact. It's things that they may have to run down with engineering. It's things that they may have to work with a warehouse or the billing team on an error that are not quick things to handle. It's not that an agent on the frontline agent can't do it, but it's just something we don't want to take them off of to go do. It's something we can put, it's small enough volume that we don't have to put all of that into our frontline groups. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at.
So Dimitri, is it fair to say that the first level technical support, customer service, billing, payment is all done through this universal agent group?
Yes, we probably are somewhere around 78 to 79% of our calls get handled at that level. And that also includes everything that goes to a technician in the field, and and things that and things that we have to send an RMA kit to or anything like that. But most everything we do gets handled at that level.
So Dimitri, you've gone through a journey. Obviously, it's been several. If I recollect correctly, it's been several years that you started and you ended up to where you are. How long did it take you to get to where you are today?
It took us probably about a year and a half to make this transition. there was quite a bit of work we had to do on on testing, because we had to test the training models. I mean, we put a test class in. We'd have several classes running with different training models. Do we do it all at once in one classroom, then bring them out into a nesting period on the floor? Do we split up the training? What components actually are going to be in that initial training? Those are the things we worked out. And then we had a bunch of technological things we had to do, because if we had to do phased training, we had to figure out how to get the right skill sets to the to agents as they get their initial training, they come out for a nesting in between, they go into a second classroom period. So there was quite a bit of work that had to go with that, and then we also had to work out the pay models and where was that going to move everybody and how did that fit into our overall budget, things like that. So it was a lot of phasing and planning, and when do we implement it, when we get new budget periods, things like that.
Dimitri, we have a question here. I'll read out the question verbatim. I guess it's, how do you deal with the challenge of dealing with highly technical issues compared to specific and detailed billing concerns as it relates to a universal agent?
For our business, I don't really think we have super detailed billing concerns. So, I mean, we're basically a recurring bill with very few meter type charges, so it's pretty straightforward. And we do have some pretty highly technical agents. When you really look at what's going on in the work, you break it down, it's not really that technical. If you had something that worked, usually it's something relatively simple that makes it stop working, which is most of the things we get, and being able to explain those differences. So we really figured out that we could find the aptitude for the technical skills, and a true with a person who had those soft skills you needed for the more difficult billing type conversations. So I mean, it wasn't really hard for us, but I think a lot of that had to do with the type of business we're in.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because you alluded to a couple of things in that last statement. You alluded to recruiting what seems to be a slightly different profile. You said recruiting for technical skills. And then let's talk about that, and then Dimitri, if you'd also address the training issue around how did the training change, how did you adapt that piece? Okay.
Well, the skills piece is, and it's something I've found in other organizations I've worked with, that we tended to hire too technical of a person, which was actually a harder person to train, because they had their own methods and their own things, and they thought they actually knew better than our training. So to be honest, we ran into those things. But we really looked for the aptitude for it. I mean, do you have good troubleshooting skills? So starting to adapt our recruiting to look for those types of skills, but really have good soft skills. To be able to take a customer through those periods. As far as training, again, we tried all kinds of things in training. We tried to do it all in one classroom. We tried to take everything we did and turn it into a universal agent. It kind of, that kind of backfired on us, and we finally settled on, a good point of where we could take about 65% or so of the work that we really came across about 8 different, use cases. And we trained those things very well. It takes about 3 weeks to get that out. And that includes all the systems training, process training, product training, things like that went through the basic technical training, for the easier things to do, which were service out things, stuff like that. And then we put them on the floor for two weeks after that. And depending on how they progressed through that, we could make a decision before we made this huge investment in training, whether this person was going to make it or not, or whether we take them on into the next realm. And then they go back into class for about a week and a half, and then we put them back out for another week and a half, of nested training, and then they go to the regular floor. And usually within about 90 days, they're a fully proficient person, that we would consider is ready to do just about anything that comes at them.
So if I was doing my math correctly there, it's about 5 weeks. It's about a total 9-week training program, so to speak. So there's another question here. How long is your training and nesting period for the universal agent?
Yeah, it's about 9 weeks total.
9 weeks total. And how does that split between training and nesting?
It's probably about 60-40
Okay, thank you.
in being in the classroom to nesting.
Perfect. The longer investment in training, and we'll talk about ROI in a couple of minutes, because there's obviously a longer investment that you're making in training and finding the right agent. Did it change the agent profile that you're looking for? Are you looking for a very different skill set, or are you looking for a different agent?
I don't think I think we actually were able. We figured out we were actually able to look for a less technical agent and still end up with the same result. Again, we looked for that aptitude to learn the technical training, because it's not really super heavy technical training, because most of the things that we can't solve in the center end up having to go to an engineer anyway in the development guys for the equipment. So so we actually we started to move towards hiring that better soft skill to be able to give customers a better experience through getting their issues resolved.
And we had another question around employee salary structure. So the question, I guess, really is, did this change your labor rate?
It changed the labor rate for the existing pool, because you have a bunch of agents, that are there getting paid a wage, and now they're having to pick up another skill. But we were able to really look at the people coming in, since they were less of a technical burden. We were actually able to make that adjustment through turnover to bring folks in at a lower rate, and start to give them bumps through those hurdles of training, and then once they made it through their full 90-day period, things like that. So they actually got some kind of satisfaction and salary bumps coming through, but we're ending up pretty much in the same place we were before we started Universal. And then the efficiencies we gained from it, from not having to answer calls twice, things like that, more than paid for the initial changeover to having to give that other group a little bit more money. And then a lot of those guys ended up in the advanced teams anyway, through the natural attrition process.
Excellent. Dimitri, it strikes me that we've talked about kind of the human aspect of this in enabling a universal agent, recruiting the right person, training them, and giving them the right skill set, but they also need the right tool set. And particularly if you're defining universal agents as handling multiple channels, talk a little bit about how you get there, because if you can't serve the agent all the channels of support, or put it in somewhat of a universal desktop, becomes challenging for them. So there seems to be a technology component to this that you must have factored into your journey.
Yes, luckily for us, the contact management platform we have is an omni-channel platform, so we can do all of these channels. We can do chat, phone, email, SMS. We can even integrate to some of the direct social messaging channels. So luckily we already had that. We also did a pretty significant changeover in migrating to a newer CRM platform. So a lot of the things they were having to go hunt, find, we were able to present to them right away, and you just make the overall navigation and administrative part of their jobs, much easier. It was actually the first thing I think we ever put into the center that we actually got positive response. And when we made a change, the agents actually came back and said, "This is so much nicer."
That's always a good thing. Talking about response from agents, let's talk a little bit about the economics of universal agents. And I think one of the first questions that comes up is, we'll talk about the customer piece, but let's start from the internal center. Has this impacted attrition or your retention, your absenteeism? What's the impact to the employee ESAT, so to speak?
I think we still, from what I see, we most of our agents are still relatively happy. We haven't seen any changes in our attrition patterns anywhere due to this. Generally our guys, even at our partners, we score usually, one of the highest programs, in their organizations for employee sat. So I think all of that is pretty much irrelevant, as impact to what we did. Everything kind of moved forward status quo.
Okay. And what about, this is another question that came in, relative to how have you seen customer satisfaction change, if at all, from the previous model to a universal agent model?
CSAT has always been relatively high as we measure our touch points. I mean, it hasn't moved a lot. We've steadily, since we've done it, been improving. The biggest number that started to move was our first call resolution. That was the biggest one, and we measure first call resolution from our customer surveys, not from our own metrics of let's exclude this, let's not do this. We let the customer tell us that was this the only time you called about it, and did it solve your issue? So we went up a good 20-25% in that world. Almost immediately.
And Dimitri, you'd mentioned an impact on transfers too, or that earlier on you talked about this having a positive impact on transfers. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, we were seeing still somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 23% transfer rate between queues for customers either selecting the wrong choices on the IVR or having multiple, and more so with Fred, they were having multiple issues on a call. So they'd get their technical issue thing and then have a question about their bill and they get transferred to somebody else. So I think we knocked our transfer rate down. I'm trying to remember the last number is somewhere around 7 or 8%. It's very, very low now.
So if I'm kind of netting this out, you've increased FCR about 25%, reduced transfers very significantly. Mm-hmm. You've obviously had a significant impact on reducing customer effort.
We're hoping so. That's what it looks like from the numbers.
And on the flip side, though, so you get the benefits of that. On the flip side, if I heard you correctly, you said your overall cost of service hasn't increased or decreased. It hasn't really changed.
Actually, in the beginning it didn't. We kind of held what we did, but we've actually been, dropping, steadily in our cost per transaction, and cost per customer numbers. Every year we drop a bit. So I mean, it's still working. Some of the tricks would be to, understand what you want to put to the big group. When we launch a new product or a new feature, we don't really put it into the universal pool until it gets to scale. We want, we'll keep like a new product, in with the advanced team to support it until it's gotten to a scale where the universal agents can get enough of them, where they don't forget something. We don't want them getting something one every 1,000, interactions, so they stay fresh on it. So it's really learning that balance of when is the right time to move something into the universal pool too.
Great. Couple of other questions that have come in, and so for everybody on the call, if you'd like to submit a question, please do so in the Q&A window to the right of your screen here. A couple of other questions that have come in, Dimitri, if you don't mind, let's try and address some of these. Question is, do you have a knowledge management system integrated into your contact management CRM platform?
We do. It's actually part of the platform. So it actually does, automatic searches based on the structured pick values that they pick, and actually starts to narrow things down for them. It also can do contextual search.
Great, and somewhat related, how is AI and other omni-channel capabilities playing a role to enable the success for your universal agents? Do you use any AI?
Yeah, right now we're not using any AI. We are starting to look at, the only automation we really use right now would be through our IVR, but luckily our platform can use the same IVR code base for all of the channels. So we're actually looking at some of the bot-based things to actually move some of the functions that we can do, on the self-service site and the IVR into SMS and chat, and chatbot, level things. We probably won't do it with email or anything like that yet, but we are looking at moving those things in there, but it's how we do it that we're worried about. I mean, we're not trying to force customers into self-service. We want them to self-select so they have, better, stickiness to it, and not to irritate people who really don't want to deal with it, again, to stay with the frictionless experience.
Great. And Dimitri, your network of service centers in-house with partners, give us a little flavor of this, and is Universal Agent contained within a certain set of centers, or is it universal across, no pun intended,
We have
across your
3 partners.
your
We have 3 partners, and we are 100% outsourced. We have no captive agents at all. And Universal Agent is across every property. It's the same working model everywhere.
Did your partners have to adapt to a Universal Agent model, or is that how they started off?
Oh, no. We adapted to it all. Everybody went through the adaptation. Oh, actually, one came on in the model because it came on late, but the 2 main partners actually did go through that transition. They were part of it.
Excellent. Once again, if anybody has any questions, please submit them. Else, I will continue on the questions we currently have. The question is, what is the time to competency for a universal agent and the impact of attrition on cost? You've addressed, I think, the latter part of this earlier.
Well, the great part about us being 100%, outsourced is we don't necessarily pay for attrition. So it's actually baked into the overhead of our partner costs. But we do pay for the nesting piece because they are actually contributing and taking calls. We just pay at a different rate. It really hasn't had, any negative impact to our costs, and our folks are usually, just like before, it was about 90 days to full proficiency, even when they were, technical, non-technical agents. We're still getting to that full proficiency level in the same amount of time, but we've actually just moved the bar of proficiency. It's actually just a higher proficient agent now. But about 90 days, they're good to go, and they're just about as good as anybody else that's been out there. We have actually some 90-day agents to beat some, year-and-a-half agents.
Excellent. That's pretty good ROI from what you've described, Dimitri, in terms of being able to increase FCR, decrease your transfer rate. You have a model that seems to work for you. What's the biggest, and you've done this before, Dimitri, at other organizations. From your, this is my question to you now. From your perspective, for those folks that said they were on the journey towards starting this, evaluating where they are. If there was some guidance you could leave them with, what guidance would that be as they begin this journey of a universal agent?
I would say don't try to boil the ocean. Start to take some time, look at what your work is, make sure that your business actually leans toward this type of a model. If it does, though, definitely decide whether does an agent need to be able to do anything and everything that needs to come to them. I think that's a pipe dream in a lot of cases. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should say you could always get a couple of agents to do that, but is it in your best interest to invest that much to make that happen? I think you want to pick what percentage of your work you want to have handle at Universal, and then handle the rest of it as the exceptions they are. Because again, if you want to do things that they're not going to see often, they're not going to be good at them. So just just do that analysis and make sure you weigh that out very well. And then also the same thing goes with the channels is, your voice channel is usually always still the biggest, and everybody doesn't have the same writing skills. There's certain things that you're not going to want to put people in a public forum versus private messaging forums. So really do figure out. Every agent doesn't have to be able to do every channel. Just enough agents have to be able to do every channel. It's really just finding that balance.
Great. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I think that was great counsel and guidance for what is now 40% of individuals that are in the exploratory phase. With this, we kind of hit the end of this webinar. For everybody on the call, an on-demand version of this webcast will be available in about a day's time. Please don't forget to download the resources available to you. You can find all the on-demand webinars for this and others on the right of your screen there. Dimitri, thank you so much for your insight, your best practices, your guidance in what you folks have done with the Universal Agent. Very much appreciate your time today, Dimitri.
Okay, thanks for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for attending today's TP Talks. Take care, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.